All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Titus U webinar. Titus U is our learning and development division of Titus Talent Strategies. And we are so excited today to talk about the coaching difference. My name is Bethany Whitted, and I am a people and learning senior consultant here at Titus Talent. So I am involved in all things learning and development, and a lot of that revolves around teaching coaching skill. So super excited. I am joined by two incredible coaches and people developers here at Titus Talent. So I'll let them go ahead and introduce themselves, Jeff and Raina.
Hi, I am Raina Fryer. I'm Senior Director of People and Learning here at Titus. And so I'm responsible for all things transactional HR as well as transformational HR practices, from organizational development to internal recruiting and payroll and benefits, all the things people love about HR.
So fun. My name is Jeff Boucher.
Is that fun, Jeff? HR is so fun.
Raina makes it fun.
My name is Jeff Boucher. I'm a senior director, not in HR. I oversee operations for one of the regions here at Titus Talent. So achieving goals, setting benchmarks.
Awesome. Well, again, we want this to be a conversation. So keep thinking about questions throughout, and we'll have like 30 minutes of just a casual conversation about coaching, some of the key shifts and the coaching difference. And then towards the end, we want to answer your questions. So be thinking of questions, and then we'll type them in the chat at the end. So we'll go ahead and get started with some very telling stats. So coaching is quickly becoming a key leadership skill, really distinguishing those good from great leaders. And for good reason. So we have these stats from Better Up Coaching. Employees and coaching cultures have a 68% increase in intent to stay. We'll talk a little bit about why that is, but that is a massive increase in intent to stay. 149% increase in resilience, otherwise known as grit. So employees are better at working through problems, staying in hard trials and pushing past them, thinking strategically. And when we put those together, we see double productivity. So about a 200% increase in productivity organization-wide, which can feel counterintuitive because coaching takes a lot of time and energy from leaders. So hopefully these connections of why we see these bottom line impacts will become clear throughout our conversation today. So Jeff, we've talked about some of the impact of coaching. What the heck is coaching? Give us a definition.
I mean, first of all, can we go back to that slide? We're just going to throw 200% increase in productivity.
And just shrug like it doesn't matter, right, Jeff? Just shrug like it doesn't matter.
It's a quick double of productivity.
Is 200% a lot? That's so amazing. No, we can go to the next slide, but I'm just like, why? We just like, it's an amazing statistic. You know, and this definition here, coaching is helping others identify, set, and meet their own goals. I think that's a really appropriate definition. You know, I think I would add on to that through an empowerment approach, through a supportive approach. A couple of things hop off this slide to me, and it's the first one would be the word helping. And I think that good coaches come from a very genuine place, a desire to help, an ability to set their ego aside and really develop people to achieve and to grow. And the second thing is when we talk about meet their own goals. So it is the employee's agenda, and making sure that as a leader and as a coach, your goals for someone are in alignment to their goals. So yeah, that's I think it's a great definition.
And Jeff, I'm glad you focused on the idea of meeting their own goals, because of course, in our organization, we talk a lot about allowing people to figure out where they want to grow to. And a lot of times we have managers who are thinking, well, I want this person to promote. And for that person's season, maybe they're really happy in the seat that they're currently in, and they are mastering the skills of that current seat. So it's not about us coming in over the top and saying, well, you must be going to this next level. It's saying, where do you want to go? And as a coach, let me help you get there where you want to go.
Powerful.
Yeah, Raina, I think what you just hit on is that coaching is succession planning in action. Like succession planning shouldn't be a bunch of HR people, behind the curtain, figuring out where people are going to go like they're puppets, right? It's having an
Correct.
ongoing conversation. Where do you want to go? That's going to be a very powerful retention strategy, which is probably why we're seeing that 68% increase in retention. So the way I've seen coaching implemented in organizations is kind of three different modes. One is bringing in that formal external coach. And Raina, I know you've sat in that seat of being that third party voice. Another is training leaders in coaching skill and having them kind of bounce between managing, coaching, having that agility to dive into coaching conversations. And then the third is like training everyone to coach each other, which is also a really interesting idea. So Raina, can you talk a little bit about the pros and cons of those approach and when they're appropriate?
Yes, certainly. I feel like all approaches are good approaches. If you can get everybody coaching, I think that's a win. We want our people in leadership roles or people who want to be leaders to be curious by nature and to help people achieve their goals. I will say from being an external coach in my previous time with Titus is really nice when you want that person to be very unattached to all of the business inner working. So for example, coming in to truly focus just on this person's needs and not knowing about any other politics that are in play. So that can be really helpful for organizations where people maybe don't have the most comfortability going directly to their manager for coaching. They want that degree of separation. Maybe they feel like they can be a little bit more honest. And part of coaching is also not just talking about professional things. A lot of times in coaching, you're talking about things going on in your personal life. So there can be a little bit more freedom with a third party coach for people to feel like they can maybe intermix those things a little bit more comfortably, a little bit more freely, and it feels highly confidential. The other way of coaching, one of the other ways of coaching that you mentioned was really to have an expert coach, an internally embedded expert coach, whether that is all of your people managers or a set of people who are designed as coaches. That is nice because you can think about all the inner workings of the business and how coaching this person could help with strategic goals. It is important they have more than one coach because not everybody's going to love your coaching style. I've met with individuals who after our first hour free session, we've just decided that I'm not the best coach for them. Maybe I didn't have the expertise. Maybe the dynamic wasn't right. There's lots of different reasons it doesn't work, but you want to have options for people because they may identify with someone better than you. And then the third option, I love the idea of turning all managers into coaches because it is going to elevate your employee to have coaches everywhere.
And I think it's important to note that whether it's internal or you bring in someone external, creating the culture of coaching is so important. Kind of fun fact, Raina is my coach and has helped me grow. And you just heard her credentials. So I'm in very good hands. But one of the dynamics in creating that coaching culture is you have to coach coaches, and it's so much different than managing people because you have to be so agile and be able to coach a multitude of different personalities. And Raina's been really amazing about bringing that culture into our organization. I think it's really important.
Thank you, Jeff.
And you're welcome.
Absolutely. I can attest to that as well. She's a phenomenal coach. And I think what you both hit on is it's really great if you can have agility to dive into coaching skills and be able to put on a manager hat when you need it. And so we say turning managers into coaches because it's catchy, right? But probably a better title is equipping managers with coaching skills. And coaching skills, I really think are communication skills. Like everyone can benefit from active listening, from humble inquiry, from gaining greater self-awareness. And what a great culture that creates when all your people know how to do that. And part of that shift is, like we're seeing on this slide, moving from a habit of telling to a habit of asking. So Jeff, what happens when you move from a habit of telling to a habit of asking?
Well, I think you empower your employees and the people in which you're leading. They get to take ownership of their seat. You build credibility as a coach because you're showing your belief in their skill set, that they can actually get things done. I think it's I think this is a very, very critical function of coach here.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like being in the learning and development space, this is something I am continually learning. People don't learn or acquire new skills when you tell them things. It's especially true of me. I see it all the time. If you like when I'm on a plane and they're doing the whole oxygen mask spiel, I just tune that out. I don't know where the oxygen mask is. I don't know how to do any of that because it's just information coming at me.
Bethany, I'm concerned for you right now.
I know. But the thing is, I can't be bothered to listen when people are telling me things. You have to engage me. And so, but if the stewardess were to say, hey, what would you do if this plane is going down? Now you've engaged me. You've asked me a question. And I'm going to need you to move into some telling because I don't know. But engaging me with that question makes it real. It gets my buy-in.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. And this is hard, right? This is a hard thing. There's a lot of like barriers and challenges in moving from telling to asking. You know, you have, you know, what you would call like traditional power dynamics of, you know, managers kind of leading and telling people. And then you get into some more like really interesting control and trust issues of whether or not, hey, if I empower this person, if I teach and develop this person to do my role, what's next for me and how valuable am I? And yeah, you kind of have to work through that head garbage in order to become a really great coach.
Mm-hmm. And I think in those coaching moments too, we're talking about telling versus asking, but in a coaching session, when you're really dedicated to that coaching session, it's not going to be you just firing questions at a person. It is going to be a conversation where you need to start asking is to get that individual to go a little bit deeper. The whole point of a coaching session is to let the individual own the session and then for you to ask provocative questions or to challenge an assumption. It's not necessarily telling a person what to do, but it might be asking the question, well, what if you did X instead of Y, as an example?
Raina, what you just said is so key and such a common misconception. So the way I heard you put it once was it's more than what would you do? It's what would happen if you did this pathway and kind of weighing the pros and cons of different pathways. And what that does from the coachee perspective is it makes me work. So it also raises the stakes. So if I'm going into a one-on-one with a manager who I know is going to coach, I'm going to be prepared for my mind to work. I'm going to be like, this isn't a time where I just passively receive. This is a time where I force my mind to think of new ideas, to think of new strategies, to set the agenda.
I feel like that is a practice you've probably, you and I spent a lot of time in coaching sessions where you come to a meeting and it starts out as a one-on-one and it turns into coaching because you are growing in your career and you're taking your expertise to a new level. So we like to end it with a little bit of a challenge and the what would you do if, or if you took this choice instead of the other. I mean, Jeff, when we were preparing for this conversation, we've talked a little bit about you sometimes have to let people fall on their face a little bit, because we've all done it. And a really important part of learning is failing. So rather than telling the person, well, this is how I've done it in the past, which is mentorship, it's about exploring what would happen or could happen, but allowing a little bit of, I think you said egg on the face. It's okay to allow a little bit of that when you're growing a person.
Yeah, I love that. So resisting the urge to solve everyone's problems. And Jeff, I want to ask you a question because I think you'll have a good answer to this. Is it possible to overcoach someone?
Is it possible to overcoach someone? I'm sure, right? To a certain degree. You know, I think when this slide comes up, you know, I think this should be the great place for a disclaimer, right? Like this isn't for all occupations to get egg on your face, as Raina put it. Like if you are in a life-saving heart surgeon, critical EMS person, we don't suggest you let anyone fail.
Try to figure it out right in that moment.
What did you learn from this surgery? No, that's not what we're saying. But I agree. I believe what Raina said, that when you're empowered to make some wrong decisions, you get these battle scars that we all have. And I've made several wrong decisions in my career. And it's those battle scars that make me not do it again. Like, that's such a learning moment, such a cerebral learning, seared into your brain moment that you don't get if something gets done for you. And Bethany, back to your question about can you be overcoached? I think my response to that would be, I have had coaches throughout my career that really leaned into a singular focus on coaching, and that is, well, how would you solve it? What would you do? And there are moments that I also just need you to be my manager and just solve this for me. Time is of the essence. So yeah, I think you can be overcoached or maybe singularly coached, because it's a more robust ideology.
And I think you can overcoach when you don't understand that coaching is meant to have a bit of a lifespan. So for example, when I sell coaching packages, it isn't about trying to get a person who wants me to be their coach for 3 years. I'm not a life coach, I'm a business coach. And so there's typically a reason an individual is coming to me. They want to work on their self-awareness or their generosity or their empathy. And so the goal is to have a set time frame where we say we're going to work together for about 6 to 12 months, but there should be an end goal in mind where this relationship ends on that topic because they're excelling or they've mastered this, and we move to a new topic or we move on from one another because the coaching relationship is done. So I think you can overcoach if you're trying to sell we need to be in a relationship forever and ever. There is a time where it's time to move on from the relationship or to focus on something new.
Right. So are you creating a dependency or are you empowering?
Correct.
Jeff, was that a hand raise?
It wasn't. I was just adding on. It's like that ever-moving goal. It's like, who moved my cheese? It's like the finish line is constantly like another 100 yards away, just when you think that you've made all this personal progress.
Yes. And Jeff, I love in the beginning, you mentioned with the definition of coaching that it's like setting aside your ego. And when I look at this point here, moving from a cycle of fixing problems to a goal of developing people, developing people has to be more rewarding to the coach than being the one that solves the problem, being the one that tells people what to do. Because as a coach, you are kind of giving up the spotlight. You're resisting, you're holding your tongue when you know the answer, so that the coachee can come to their own conclusion. You're not fixing the problem because you are seeing them as competent and able to solve their own problems.
I think a lot of our employees, like, you feel good when you can be the person that people go to solve problems. I mean, even in my personal life, I'll sometimes hear my husband, what I would say, coaching our kids, and I'll say, hey, at some point in time, they have to be able to solve for themselves. But there is a rewarding piece of being the go-to fix-it person. However, what you're going to start to see from your managers is they start to get exhausted because they have to do their own job. And because they want to be the fix-it, they either give the answer or want to go do the work for the individual. That's a product of, like, most of us have gone through that. So as you elevate in your career, you need to delegate more, but it's hard to let go of the doing when you've been a high producing doer. So it's teaching people to transition beyond that to say, okay, my job is to now empower other people to have the skills that I've learned and not be the go-to person, because you do not have enough time in your day to be everybody's fix-it person.
So true.
Yeah, absolutely. And Raina, as you're talking, like, I keep coming back to succession planning. So I was talking with a people leader just the other day, and they have this very important role that they need a new person for. The person that's currently in the seat is on their way out. It's a director of sales. And there's really no one ready. And reflecting on that, there was a bit of a, man, if our leaders were consistently coaching, adding that element of challenge, and, like we've touched on, kind of stepping out of the way, refusing to fix the problem and letting an employee struggle a little bit, you're completely better set up as an organization for people to move up the ranks.
Certainly, because part of that is critical thinking skills that come along with being coached, and we need leaders in any organization to be critical thinkers. We need them to be able to problem solve, to identify on their own. So yeah, I mean, if we coach our people, they will be better equipped to step into higher level seats.
and innovate too, Raina, right? So
Yes.
if you are used to doing it the entire time, you're probably doing it one way, and that's your way. And there could be other better ways out there that we don't even know about because you haven't, or you may not let other people's kind of step up.
Mhm. Well said.
Yeah, I think we're hitting on a balance of performance and development. So there's a need for the organization, for the team to perform right away, and there's a need to develop, which is why we say coaching is one mode of leadership. You know, if you always coach, performance might suffer a little bit because people don't know what the heck they're doing sometimes, right? If you only develop, or if you only focus on performance, then you don't have people ready to step into those next seats. So it's learning that balance. Any tips for learning that balance being seasoned leaders?
Any tips? I think really importantly, when you have an individual who's struggling to perform, you shouldn't be focusing on coaching necessarily. You should be focusing on feedback and developing the skill set that's there, but not necessarily moving into a coaching relationship. Coaching is developed to stretch, but where we need to really focus on management is when you have a low or an inconsistent performer, because a person has to be doing their job in order to be stretching for the next job. So that's one space I would say, be careful not to coach before someone's even settled or mastered into their seat or performing well in their seat. Stay focused on managing at that point.
And I'd say be patient, right? This is certainly not going to be the quickest resolution is when you're coaching someone and developing. It's going to take time for them to learn those skills. So not the fastest solution.
Patience.
Absolutely. So we've hit on coaching as a means to developing people and increasing engagement. But one thing I think we've just lightly tapped on is that component of people actually have good ideas that we're going to benefit from. Like, it's not just us helping them get developed, it's us learning from their ideas. How do seasoned leaders, you both are seasoned leaders, how do you maintain a sense of genuine curiosity as you grow in experience and knowledge?
Jeff, a seasoned leader code for you all are aged. You are aged leaders. Is that code?
Mature leaders.
It's meant to be a compliment.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I mean, right, like if we want to reference like a very topical coach, Ted Lasso, where he says like be curious and not judgmental, like I think that really applies here. I mean, how do you maintain genuine curiosity? You know, I think it boils down to just the care for your people again, like just wanting them to grow. And I think actually, if you see it happen, if you see someone elevate up and out and maybe even leapfrog you, there is this satisfaction and peace in that. And I think that you tend to double down and kind of going after that a little bit more. I hope that was.
Yeah. I feel like it's easy to genuinely care for people and to keep that curiosity alive when people want to be coached. I mean, Bethany, you've heard me say this and you said it to me the other day. Don't chase someone to be coached. If people want to grow and they want to be developed, they're going to enjoy the coaching relationship, and it makes it really easy to be a coach. So I will not chase an individual for a session. I'm always like, schedule the sessions when it works for you. Do you want to meet monthly? You want to meet quarterly? If they cancel, they cancel. I'm not going to chase a person to be coached. So if they want that interaction, they're going to go for it. And it makes it really easy to stay curious, and also makes it really easy to care.
Yeah, I like that. And I think so much of leadership comes down to caring for people. It seems basic, it seems simple, but it really does affect the way we do things. Anyone can do coaching skills, but if there's actual care behind it, that's what resonates with people. That's what makes them want to change behaviors and set meaningful goals for themselves. So I want to like jump into some tangible examples just so people can have something a little more concrete to chew on. We've been talking about coaching a little more abstract, but Jeff, if an employee comes to you and say they are expressing, hey, I don't know how to manage my time. It's a remote company, so this is something that's maybe probably a common issue. How do I structure my day? They voice that they're struggling with time management. What's maybe that coaching approach and that managing approach, and how you might utilize, which one you would utilize?
And you are putting me on the spot with my coach on here. So let's see how we
Oh my gosh, this puts me more on the spot than you. It's like, have I been doing a good job coaching?
Oh boy,
know?
oh boy, oh boy. So, I think a manager's reaction to that would be, here, let me help you block out your time. This is where I'd spend time here. This is how I do it there. Whereas a coach may dive a little bit deeper in understanding what part of the process is leading to the time management issues. Are we dealing with a root cause of time management, or possibly are there other components earlier in the process that, if you fixed, would resolve that? How did you coach?
That was very good. And I would say the other part of your question, Bethany, is when do you make the decision to coach or manage? And I think in a situation where you have a brand new employee who's maybe new in their career, that might be a better time for you to manage and mentor and say, here's what I've done that has worked for me. And you can save coaching for more seasoned professionals. I think the other thing that, you've all heard me say is that managing isn't a dirty word. I think nowadays everyone wants to use the word micromanagement, but there is an element is you still have to manage your people because work needs to get done. There are business objectives that we have to meet. We have to guide and we have to control and we have to fix it sometimes because we have to hit our metrics as an organization. So managing is highly important. And then coaching is important, that they're just not one is better than the other. It's using the two to develop really strong teams and really strong individuals.
Right. Yeah. And I think with this time management example, there's tips and tricks you can give people. You can say what works for you, but at the end of the day, it is so individual. So my system isn't going to work for Jeff or Raina. Sometimes it doesn't work for me. I've got to switch it up. But having people express their own, like, where are you struggling? What time of day it is? What works for you? And having them verbally process even what the best system forward is an opportunity for them to A, solve their own problem, and B, gives you an opportunity to get to know your employee a little more, what motivates them, how they function best in the workplace. So I think that's another thing that we keep hitting on is when you stay curious longer, when you ask those questions, maybe telling is appropriate, but if you stay in the question phase a little longer, you're going to uncover more. And if you jump to diagnosing what the problem is, you might prescribe something that isn't the right solution. Like your advice might not be the right advice, or you might miss out on hearing some insight that you would have learned had you stayed curious longer. But it's hard because we have our advice monsters, right? Everyone has an internal advice monster. Like Raina said, we want to fix the problem. We want to be the go-to. And I definitely can fall prey to that, wanting to have the answer.
Yeah, I feel like this is the constant conversations you have with your loved ones in your life, or that I have with my spouse, where I'll be like, I just want you to listen here, or I want you to ask me more questions. I'm not coming to you because I need to solve. But I think it's also important to be able to say that. So maybe I don't think it. I should be saying that out loud. Like, hey, I need you to listen. I need you to ask questions. I don't need you to solve for me, versus the sometimes when you do. I mean, Jeff, you shared an example of a time where you're like, I just need you to solve.
Yeah. And that's something that, you can take into your personal relationships with your partners and with your friends. I think it's crazy important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're thinking about how one becomes a coach, anyone can be a coach, right? Coaching is a set of skills that you can jump in and out of. So I think sometimes people think, coaching is a certain style of leadership, maybe for a little bit of a softer leader, a little bit more of a people-oriented leader. When in reality, we saw those stats at the beginning of this presentation, like coaching works, it impacts the bottom line. We're talking about behavior changes from leaders that impact the bottom line.
And it's a critical skill, Bethany. Again, you hear a lot of people say soft skills. These are critical skills, not soft skills. These are skills that everybody needs to have.
Thank you for that. Yes, I know people are tired of the phrase soft skills because it sounds like they're not as important.
They are.
When in reality, like, these types of skills impact the numbers. We know that. We've seen it several times. And so this is from our Titus U course, Lead by Coaching. We also have an extended version of this course called Turning Managers into Coaches. And it's all about training these skills. So starting with self-awareness. In order for us to be good coaches, we have to know ourselves first. Secondly, humble inquiry. So getting genuinely curious about the insights and the passions of our people. Surrendered listening. So rather than listening to get from point A to point B, kind of surrendering your agenda. How does one do that? How do you implement that in your day-to-day? And then transformational feedback. So we didn't talk about this too much today, but it's not all about asking questions and listening. I think the idea here is that if you do ask questions and listen, your feedback is far more likely to be transformational, but there most certainly is a place for inserting that transformational feedback. So this is a little bit of an overview to some of the things that we are talking about coaching, developing in our Titus U courses. And we've got a QR code here. For our open session, Lead by Coaching. It's a 2-hour condensed, kind of off-the-shelf version of our customized, more thorough training, turning managers into coaches. So a great way to kind of dip your toe into some of what we're talking about on coaching and getting into these 4 coaching skills.
Definitely. And one of the questions that actually came in from a participant is asking about like being a certified coach. There are some amazing certifications out there for coaches to learn. They can be very, very pricey. So I will say that everybody needs to do what they find best if you want to engage in a certification program. But sometimes the best coaches just come from having experience, like being out there, engaging with people, being a people manager, and kind of learning those skills along the way. So I think you can take independent certification courses or just do online learning. There's so many free things that you can do out there. There's things that we have, as Bethany just suggested, to kind of learn some more of the skill sets. But there are some great programs out there as well. And if you'd like to reach out to me, I can give you some of those courses. That they're not things that we have by design.
Again, use seasoned coaches. So all of us
Seasoned.
Covered in
Yeah.
battle scars.
Seasoned, yes.
What word do you want me to use?
It's fine. I like what you said.
It's fine.
Credible, competent, amazing.
We're so sensitive, aren't we, Jeff? We're so sensitive to that language.
Yeah. Agreed.
Oh, good.
Awesome. Well, this has been a great conversation. We would love to hear from some of you. What are you thinking? What questions are arising? We've got a few popping up in the chat. What do you have, or what advice do you have for a flat organization? How would you coach talent earlier in their career on growth when there isn't an organizational ladder? So we're thinking about a flatter organization. So it's not as clear cut of, you're going to be in this position, this position, this position. How do you coach talent in that setting?
Nick, I think that's a really important question to ask, because a lot of organizations are like this. One way you can address that is just coaching to skill development rather than to a position. I think we get a lot in our heads about like, hey, what is this corporate ladder? Where am I trying to climb? And really the best thing to do is just to build skill so that it doesn't matter if they're going into a new role, they're just getting better for the role that they're in. We're also strong believers at Titus that you should be coaching people for opportunities elsewhere. I hate to say that because, of course, we want to keep all of our amazing talent, but sometimes we are preparing people to take a next step outside the organization. So if there isn't an org chart that's long where people are reaching for the next step, really focus on skill development, creating what I would call breadth or depth of knowledge rather than coaching to a seat.
And bench strength, right? It's very important to kind of have that bench strength. And at Titus too, Nick, we talk about kind of building your next role. So by developing the coaching skills, being coached and developing them down, I think you are kind of creating, helping to unflatten the organization.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Raina, I've heard you say this before, like development is so much more than vertical development. It's breadth, right? It's developing skills that people want to develop. And we can get creative about giving credibility to people who aren't managing people. Maybe they're not moving up the traditional pathway, but they're still developing skills. So giving seniority and creative ways to people who are highly functioning individual contributors that are developing their skills in their seats.
I like when questions seem planted because they're so good. Thank you, Nick. Very good question. I think a lot of organizations struggle with it. So I think that's why it's so important to bring that here. Another more tactical question, Bethany, is the question on the HRCI credits.
Oh, yes. Does the course come with HRCI credits? It does, right?
All courses, yes, all
Oh.
courses that we have, we submit for both HRCI and SHRM credits. We all know the importance of maintaining our certifications that are out there. So we submit and all of our courses are eligible for credit.
Yeah. So I believe the 2-hour course is 2 credits.
Correct. All right. I love the silence.
Yeah, that's part of coaching, right? Getting comfortable with silence. It always draws out more.
Perfect. Well, we obviously you all have access to our information. So if you do have follow-up questions or would like to chat just one-on-one to ask more about how we could support, we're always happy to do that. So Bethany, I'll hand it back to you just to close out for the day.
Yeah, so let's keep this going. We've got another webinar coming up, the 4 steps to a coaching conversation. We're going to be giving away kind of more of our secrets to those coaching conversations. So this is really going to give you a basic framework to lean on in those coaching conversations, how you can solicit the most value and really get into a meaningful conversation quicker. So hope that piqued your interest. Go ahead and scan the QR code to save your seat. Raina will be there, so that should be just enough incentive in itself.
What a
Mike,
lineup.
Bethany, I love that.
What a stacked lineup that is.
Come hang out
smokes.
again. Come hang out again. We love it.
Definitely. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. Like Raina said, please reach out if you do have more questions. We recorded this, so we will be emailing it to you, and we will also put it on YouTube. So thank you so much for spending some of your Thursday with us. And we look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.
You.